I didn't plan on telling anyone this, not because I'm ashamed, but because for a long time it felt like nobody would believe me. When you're the guy who's always tired, always taking the extra shift, always doing the quiet work that keeps a place running but never earns you respect, people assume your problems are your fault. They assume you're unlucky or slow or not ambitious enough. That's what my boss liked to hint at during safety meetings. Little jokes wrapped in concern, the kind that made everyone laugh and made me swallow my pride like it was part of the job. I lived in a room above the warehouse. Room? That's generous. It was a converted storage closet, technically a company-provided living space, which meant I didn't pay rent, but also had no lease, no privacy, no rights. A bed, a hot plate, a flickering lamp. The walls still smelled like motor oil on humid days. But it was better than sleeping in my truck, and that was exactly the point. My boss, Mr. Cole, never let me forget it. "You're lucky to have that room," he'd say, tapping my shoulder like we were father and son. "Most places don't do that for employees anymore. Shows how much I value stability." He valued obedience. Stability was just the leash. Most mornings started before the sun. I'd climb down the rattling metal stairs from my room, clock in, and walk through the maze of pallets stacked 3 stories high. My hands were always cracked, always smelling faintly of cardboard dust and cheap hand soap. But for a while, I told myself it was temporary. Steady work, predictable pay. Nothing glamorous, but enough to keep going. Except it wasn't predictable. Some weeks he'd adjust hours because the budget's tight. Other weeks we'd work 12-hour days during rush season, but somehow still get the same paycheck. He always had a reason, always sounded so confident that arguing made you feel stupid. And everyone else stayed quiet because they had kids, mortgages, medical bills. I stayed quiet because I didn't want to lose the room. The funny thing is, I wasn't helpless. I kept my own records. Every shift, every unpaid hour, every message where he asked me to do him a favor and stay a bit longer off the clock. I don't know why I kept them. Maybe because a part of me always knew none of this was normal. Maybe because when someone treats you small, long enough, you start collecting proof you're not. The day everything snapped didn't feel special. It was a Thursday, chilly and gray, with that warehouse smell of wet cardboard. I was loading outgoing freight when Cole stepped out of his office and called my name the way people call a dog that's wandered too far. In my office. Now. He didn't close the door behind me. A classic move, just enough privacy to threaten, but open enough that anyone walking by could hear him being reasonable. He leaned back in his chair and sighed like I'd disappointed him. "Ethan, this isn't working." That surprised me. I didn't even know we were pretending it was. He folded his hands. "You've developed an attitude, complaints, resistance to direction." "I haven't complained," I said quietly. "That's the thing," he replied, smiling thinly. "It's what you're not saying. I can feel the negativity coming off you. Creates a toxic environment." I stood there, sweaty from work, still wearing my gloves because he hadn't given me time to take them off. Toxic environment. I looked at him and realized he meant it. He genuinely believed firing me was a moral action. "So," he continued, "I've decided to let you go. Effective immediately." I didn't react. I didn't beg or yell, and I swear that irritated him. He expected collapse, panic, something he could interpret as proof that I needed him. "You'll need to vacate the room by tonight. Company property is for staff only." He twisted his mouth like this was difficult for him. "And as for your final paycheck, well, some adjustments will need to be made, given your performance issues." "My performance issues?" I echoed. "You've been dragging lately, less productive, distracted. I can't justify full pay." I opened my mouth, closed it again. I knew the numbers. I knew I'd worked more hours in the last month than anyone else on the floor. But the truth didn't matter. His decision came from a place where truth never reached. He slid a cardboard box across the desk, like he'd prepared it hours ago. "Take your things. And Ethan, he paused, savoring the moment. This is a business. Sentiment doesn't pay invoices. You'll bounce back eventually. You're used to surviving. That was the part that stung, not the firing, not the stolen pay. That line, you're used to surviving, like I was a plant that grew between cracks, something low maintenance, replaceable, too stubborn to die. I carried the box across the warehouse while the guys pretended not to look. Some nodded at me, that guilty half-nod men give when they hate what's happening, but won't risk their own safety to stop it. Others looked away entirely. I walked out to the parking lot with everything I owned in a cardboard box, the same way he handed it to me. The wind was sharp, the sky low. My truck sat there, cold and waiting. And for the first time in years, there was no shift to clock into, no stairs to climb, no door to close behind me. It was quiet in a way that felt wrong. Wrong, but honest. I set the box in the passenger seat and sat behind the wheel, hands still trembling from adrenaline I didn't show him. I thought the worst part was that I had nowhere to go. No home, no paycheck coming, no backup plan. But sitting there with the engine idling, something settled in my chest. Not fear, not anger, just a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in years. I thought losing my job was the worst part. Turned out, it was just the last time I let someone like him decide what I was worth. I spent the first night in a cheap roadside motel 2 towns away, the kind that smells like old carpet cleaner and has a TV bolted to the dresser. I paid for 1 night with my card and felt the balance shrink in a way that made my stomach twist. I wasn't broke yet, not completely, but close enough that every dollar had weight. I lay on the bed, listening to trucks pass on the highway, replaying each moment in Cole's office. Not the words, the tone, the confidence. Like firing me was housekeeping, not cruelty. I didn't sleep much. Around 4 in the morning, I sat up and opened my phone. My hands moved before I made a conscious decision. Muscle memory, maybe, or instinct. I opened the folder I had kept for months, the one I always told myself I'd delete once things got better. There they were, screenshots of texts where Cole asked me to finish up off the clock, photos of lift equipment with broken safety rails, a video of water leaking from exposed wiring during a storm, my own notes, dates, hours. Who else was there? I hadn't collected these to hurt anyone. I'd collected them because I needed proof I wasn't imagining things. Proof that the warehouse wasn't a mess because we were careless. It was a mess because Cole cut corners and blamed us afterward. I scrolled through the files until my eyes burned. I'd stayed loyal, patient, understanding. All those words supervisors love because they make you predictable, and he still threw me out like trash. Just after sunrise, my phone buzzed. A message from Ryan, one of the forklift guys. Man, what happened? Cole says you walked out, says you blew up at him. I stared at the screen. He didn't even wait a day before twisting the story. I texted back. He fired me. Said I had an attitude. Withheld pay. Be careful. He's lying to you guys too. Ryan sent 3 dots, then nothing. I imagined him standing in the break room, reading my message while looking over his shoulder. Fear makes people slow to answer. 20 minutes later, he texted again. He told the morning shift you threatened him. That's why you got kicked out of the room. I laughed out loud, a short, sharp sound that didn't feel like humor. Threatened him? I'd barely raised my voice in 3 years, and that's when something settled inside me. Something cold and steady. The opposite of panic. If he was willing to lie about me this fast, then protecting him wasn't loyalty. It was suicide. I got dressed, packed my things from the motel, and drove to a diner down the street. Ordered eggs I barely tasted. Opened my laptop and started writing. First, a formal wage complaint to the State Labor Board. Clear, factual sentences, dates, screenshots attached. The kind of complaint they actually read. Second, a report to OSHA about the equipment and wiring. Again, all facts, no emotion. Then I hesitated before opening a new email. This one wasn't to a government office. It was addressed to the compliance department of our biggest client, the company that provided nearly 80% of our warehouse's volume. I only knew the percentage because Cole bragged about it every quarter, pointing at the logo on the spreadsheets like it made him a king. I wrote a simple subject line. Regarding safety and labor conditions at Cole Logistics, I told them who I was, how long I'd worked there, what I'd seen. I didn't embellish anything. I didn't complain. I documented every claim backed by a file. I attached a folder of evidence and ended the email with one sentence. I am submitting this because I believe you would want to know what practices your name is attached to. I hovered over send for a long moment. Once I sent it, things would move on their own. No takebacks. I clicked. The message disappeared from my screen and the silence around me suddenly felt thinner. I didn't expect relief, but I felt something close to it. A shift, like I'd finally stepped out from under a heavy beam I'd been holding without noticing. I sat in the diner booth a while longer, staring out at people living their normal lives. I wondered how many of them were one bad conversation away from losing everything. How many bosses in this town carried themselves like Cole, acting generous while tightening their grip. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Luis, one of the night shift guys. Bro? Did you hear? Cole told everyone he caught you stealing time. Stealing time? That was rich. I messaged back. He's lying so he doesn't look guilty. Check your pay stubs, check your hours. I'm serious. Count them. The message delivered, but he didn't reply. People avoid truth when it threatens the ground under their feet. I understood. I used to do the same thing. The next blow landed at noon. Ryan called me, not texted, called, whispering like he was in a bathroom stall. Dude, something's up. The morning supervisor looked freaked. Cole locked himself in his office for like an hour. Then he called a meeting and started yelling about loyalty and snitches. I said nothing for a beat. He kept going. And he told the whole floor you were plotting to sue the company and take us all down with you. I closed my eyes. Typical. When a man like Cole panics, he projects his guilt onto everyone else. But Ryan sounded scared, not angry. He's losing it, he whispered. I've never seen him like this. I lowered my voice. Did he pay you for last week's overtime? Silence. No, he admitted. Said accounting was behind. He told me the same thing last month and the month before. I paused. He's not protecting you. He's using you. Ryan let out a shaky breath. So, is it true about the stuff people are saying? That you filed something? I didn't blame anyone but him, I answered. The rest is going to come out on its own. He ended the call fast, but the tremor in his voice told me he finally understood. By late afternoon, I'd parked in the lot behind a laundromat, sitting in my truck with the windows cracked. I refreshed my email obsessively, even though I knew nothing big would happen the same day. And then something small happened. Not big, but powerful. A message from a restricted address. An auto reply. Your submission has been received. A compliance officer has opened a case. Just a single line. No promises, no timeline. But it was real. The kind of real that leads somewhere. I stared at it until the words blurred. For the first time since the warehouse door closed behind me, I felt the balance tilt. Not in my favor yet, but away from his. Night came slow. I bought dinner from a gas station, drove nowhere in particular, thought about the room I used to live in, the one with the flickering lamp. I wondered if he'd already reassigned it to someone else. Some new guy desperate enough to say thanks for being given a bed that wasn't his. I pulled into a rest stop and shut off the engine. The darkness around me felt clean, not threatening. I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes. I'd spent years letting that man decide when my shift ended. This time, I was the one who started the clock. I woke up on the third morning to my phone vibrating nonstop on the passenger seat. I didn't remember falling asleep. The sky was still pale, the kind of color the world has before it decides whether it'll be a good day or bad one. 5 missed calls, 3 voicemails, All from the guys at the warehouse. I opened the first message. It was Ryan. Bro, inspectors are here. I'm serious. 3 of them. They're walking the floor asking questions. The second message came from Luis. They showed up before shift. Safety, labor, someone from the client too, maybe. Cole looks like he's going to stroke out. I sat up, heartbeat leveling out into something controlled. Steady in a way I didn't expect. Not excitement, not panic, just clarity. I'd lit a fuse and it had finally reached something dry. I started the engine and drove toward town. Not to the warehouse, I wasn't stupid, but close enough to see without being seen. When I turned onto the industrial road, I saw 3 white sedans parked outside. Not police. Worse for a man like Cole, professionals in suits, clipboards in hand, walking with purpose. I parked behind the old lumber yard and watched from a distance. Employees were outside in clusters, smoking, whispering, pacing. The air had that static tension of something breaking in real time. Then I saw him. Cole burst out the front door like someone had shoved him. His face was red, jaw tight, shirt already damp with sweat. He ran a hand through his hair, then forced a smile at one of the inspectors. They didn't smile back. He motioned toward the warehouse, explaining something with wide, frantic gestures. The inspector didn't move, didn't even blink. From where I sat, I could tell the man wasn't used to people who couldn't be intimidated. A minute later, the fire door on the side opened. 2 inspectors walked out, one holding an iPad, the other pointing at the loading bay where the guardrail was missing. They said something to each other, then took photos. Cole's expression cracked. Not dramatically, just a tiny fracture, like the first pop in a windshield before the whole thing spiders out. My phone rang. It was Luis, whispering so fast I could barely understand him. They're asking everybody about clockouts, hours, breaks, everything. And Ryan showed them his time cards. Bro, he kept them like you told him to. They're taking statements. I didn't tell Ryan to do anything. I'd only told him to look at his pay. But I didn't correct Luis. The truth was moving on its own now. A sudden silence came through the line. Then Luis whispered, Man, someone showed them the leak video. The one from the storm. He swallowed. They asked who took it. Cole said it was you. I waited. And the inspector said, Good. Then he documented correctly. Bro, you should have seen Cole's face, like he swallowed a nail. A car horn honked behind him on the call. I could hear voices rising, someone arguing, someone else telling everyone to stay calm. Then he said it. Quiet, like he was saying the confession. He's losing the contract, isn't he? I didn't answer. He already knew. The call ended abruptly when someone shouted for everyone to come inside. I lowered the phone and watched the building as trucks began to turn away from the dock, drivers refusing to enter while an inspection was active. That alone could bottle up a whole morning of shipments. Then another message popped up, a number I didn't recognize. Is this Ethan? This is Emily Carter from Northline Distribution, the compliance division. I received your email and your documentation. We've escalated the matter. Thank you. I read it twice, then once more for the feeling behind it. The tone of someone who sees you as credible, as someone whose voice counts. I'd forgotten what that felt like. Back at the warehouse, the storm finally broke. Cole came outside again, this time shouting into his phone. Not angry shouting, desperate shouting. He paced in a tight circle, suit jacket flapping, one hand gripping his hair. I'd seen him yell before, but never like this. This wasn't dominance. This was a man watching something slip through his fingers for the first time. A delivery driver walked past him and muttered something low. Cole snapped back, pointing in his face. The driver kept walking, didn't even slow down. Power evaporates fast when people stop pretending they can feel it. I watched the inspectors disappear into the office with him. The door stayed closed for a long time. Employees drifted away from the building, rubbing their arms, flicking ashes onto the pavement, waiting for a signal from someone other than him. My phone vibrated again. A message from Jenna, not my friend, but the distribution coordinator who'd always been polite to me even when Cole wasn't. Our company just froze his account. All shipments paused pending review. I'm sorry for what you went through. You didn't deserve any of it. I didn't know what to type back, so I didn't type anything yet. When the office door finally opened, Cole came out slow, stiff, like he'd aged years in an hour. The inspectors followed him, speaking in measured tones. One handed him a printed notice. He didn't take it at first. Then he did, barely holding it, like the paper weighed 50 pounds. Workers crowded behind the windows, watching the man who'd micromanaged their breaks and docked their pay stand there with a hollow look in his eyes. He spotted me, across the parking lot, across 200 feet of cold air. Our eyes met, and something in his expression flickered. Confusion first, then recognition, then fear masquerading as anger. He walked toward me, not fast, not aggressive, just purposeful. I stepped out of my truck, not to confront him, but because sitting felt wrong. He stopped a few yards away, breathing hard. "What did you do?" he asked, voice trembling in the way men hate to show. "What did you tell them?" I didn't raise my voice. "The truth! You ruined me," he spat. "No," I said. "You built this. I just stopped carrying it for you." He blinked, stunned, like nobody had ever told him his consequences belonged to him. "I gave you a place to live," he said. "I gave you steady work." "You took more than you gave," I answered. He opened his mouth again, but one of the inspectors called his name. He flinched, and turned around. They needed him back inside. He looked at me one last time, as if waiting for me to apologize, or pity him, or give him a way out. I didn't. He walked back inside, shoulders heavy, the notice still folded in his hand. The rest unfolded fast. By noon, half the shift was sent home, until further notice. By evening, the truck routes were reassigned to other warehouses. By the next morning, a sign hung on the door. Operations suspended pending. Investigation. 3 days earlier, he'd thrown my life out in cardboard boxes. Now I stood there watching his whole business leave the building the same way. 2 months passed before I stepped anywhere near the industrial district again. Not because I was afraid, but because life had finally stopped feeling like a reaction. For the first time in years, my days had structure that didn't hinge on someone else snapping their fingers. I'd taken a job with a competitor, a mid-sized logistics company with clean break rooms, real safety checklists, and supervisors who talked to you like you shared the same species. The pay was better. The hours were consistent. Nobody expected me to live on site like a houseplant someone forgot to water. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment above a bakery. The walls didn't smell like motor oil. The windows opened properly. I bought a couch that I'd wanted for years. Not expensive, just mine. A place to sit that didn't feel temporary. I started cooking real meals again, even if they were simple. Eggs that didn't come from gas stations. Vegetables that weren't a rare sight. Quiet, stable days stack faster than the chaotic ones. You look up one morning and realize a whole month has gone by without someone tearing you down. That alone felt like wealth. The State Labor Board emailed me mid-March. A final notice. Back wages recovered. Settlement processed. Funds incoming. It wasn't a fortune. But it was all the unpaid hours he'd skimmed off me. Every "do me a favor," every shift that ran past midnight, with no overtime. When the deposit hit my account, I didn't celebrate. I didn't buy anything big. I just sat there at my kitchen table and let the quiet settle deeper. It felt like the universe had finally balanced a tab I never should have had to carry. A week later, the OSHA report came back. Multiple violations confirmed. Fines issued. Case closed. No drama. No courtroom scenes. Just truth documented, signed, sealed, and done. Life drifted into a rhythm I didn't know I was capable of. Work, gym, dinner, sleep. Weekends sometimes meant helping a friend move, or catching a movie, or fixing a loose step in the old stairwell for my landlord, who insisted on giving me a discount I didn't take. I didn't want favors. Not anymore. I wanted clean lines, honest exchanges, nothing hanging over me like a debt of gratitude. Then, on a Thursday morning in April, my new manager dropped a folder on my desk. "Hey, Ethan," he said, "we've got an applicant with warehouse supervisor experience. Came through the online system. Strong resume. Mind giving it a quick look? You'd be working with him if we hired him?" "Sure," I said. He walked away, and I opened the folder. It took me less than a second to freeze. There it was, his name, his work history, polished summary, bullet points, buzzwords, like a man trying to rebuild a tower from sand. Cole. For a moment, all I felt was distance, like I was reading the story of someone I used to know, not someone who once controlled my life. I turned the page. His achievements were things I'd done, things my old crew had done, things he'd taken credit for. I kept reading anyway. People don't change on paper. They just rearrange the words. My manager walked back. "You know him?" "Yeah," I said. "I do." He nodded. "We'll call him in for an interview at noon. Mine's sitting with HR for the evaluation. Good to have someone who can speak to his experience." I didn't object. I didn't ask to bow out. The part of me that once would have avoided conflict was gone, quietly shed the way a snake sheds an old skin. I'd spent too long letting other people tell my story. This was just me telling the truth to the one place that deserved it. At noon, I walked into the conference room. HR was already there, my manager too. A pitcher of water on the table, printed copies of the resume. A polite, neutral setup. Then the door opened. Cole stepped inside. He looked smaller somehow. The confidence he used to carry like armor was gone. His suit hung a little loose. His eyes darted around the room before they landed on me. He froze. His mouth opened like he might say something. A joke, an apology, a plea. But nothing came out. He sat slowly, hands clasped tightly like he was holding something together. The HR rep smiled professionally. "Mr. Cole, thank you for coming. Before we begin, we like to hear from internal staff who may be familiar with the candidate's prior work. Ethan, you've worked with him before." Cole swallowed. Yes, we know each other." He looked at me again, searching for mercy that wasn't his to claim. I spoke calmly. No bitterness, no performance, just truth. "I worked under him for 3 years," I said. "In that time, there were consistent issues with wage practices, unpaid overtime, and safety violations. His site was eventually shut down after external inspections confirmed multiple problems." HR's pen paused over her notepad. My manager leaned back slightly. I continued. "He created a work environment where speaking up resulted in retaliation. Several employees filed complaints that were later validated. I don't believe he maintained safe or fair conditions, and I don't think he should supervise people here." There was no anger in my voice, no triumph, just a man recounting the weather. Cole stared at the table, jaw clenched, eyes unfocused. For the first time since I'd known him, he said nothing, maybe because he had nothing left to say. HR thanked me. My manager nodded. The interview proceeded for another 10 minutes, but it was already over before it began. Everyone in the room understood that. When it ended, I stepped out first, not to avoid him, just because there was no reason to stay. As I reached the hallway, I heard the soft, heavy exhale of a man absorbing the full weight of consequences he once thought he was immune to. I didn't turn around. I went back to my workstation, opened my laptop, and returned to the shift schedule I'd been reviewing before the interview. Life didn't pause for poetic moments. It just kept moving. That evening, I walked home through the warm spring air. The bakery downstairs had thrown out the last batch of bread, and the smell drifted up the stairwell. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and felt something simple but solid. The sense that everything in the room was mine. The air, the quiet, the future. I set my keys on the hook, turned on the small lamp by the couch, heated up leftovers. Nothing dramatic, nothing story-worthy to anyone but me. I ate in silence, not the kind Cole used to force on me, but the kind I chose. When I finished, I rinsed the dish and left it in the sink for the morning. No guilt, no rushing, just life. People think revenge is fire, loud Blinding, explosive. They're wrong. Real revenge is calm. It's the moment you look around and realize the person who tried to break you no longer has a single piece of your life in their hands. He fired me thinking I was broke and easy to replace. 3 days later, he started paying the price for every shortcut he'd ever taken. And I paid mine too, once. I learned I'd rather start from zero than stay owned, and I've never been that poor again.